Whether you're a new parent, grandparent, or just somebody that wants to plan ahead, starting your children down the right financial road early is an amazing gift that you can give them. Many parents wait too long or don't even know where to start. You definitely do not need to be rich to start building wealth for your kids today. You just need a plan. In today's video, we're gonna go over 6 different accounts that you could consider opening for your children, plus a bonus tip at the end that will help to set them up for financial success. Teaching our kids about wise financial stewardship isn't something that should happen when they turn 18 and prepare to fly the nest. It's a lifelong process of discipling them, teaching them, and most importantly, modeling for them what wise financial stewardship looks like. And a great way to do that is to begin their lives establishing some accounts that will help them not only build wealth, but will be something you can use as a teaching tool along the way. I believe we are stewards of all that God has given us. This includes our money, but this also includes our children. So it makes a lot of sense that we would want to take seriously our job as parents to teach our children how to handle the immense responsibility of stewarding God's money in their financial future. And that's why I made this channel. I'm Sarah, I'm a certified financial educator, and I'm also a Christian. And I created this channel to help people think about handling God's money, God's way for God's glory, because it all belongs to Him. If you'd like to talk finances, getting out of debt, and all things budgeting, but from a biblical worldview, consider subscribing to the channel for new videos every week. Quick little note, I live here in the States and the majority of my viewing audience also lives in the States, so some of the accounts that I'm going to mention today are very specific to the US. You may need to look into what your counterpart would be in the country that you live in, where that applies. The first accounts you would want to consider opening for your kids would be checking and savings accounts. Now these are just very basic. They are not the accounts that are going to build a lot of wealth long term, but they are accounts that are great teaching tools. Skills like how banking works, direct deposit, bill paying, budgeting, saving, these are all things that these accounts can help your kids learn and accomplish. When our kids were small, we opened up their first accounts when they were, 4 or 5 years old. We would take them to the bank, made it really fun. They gave them a little piggy bank, and it could be where they would take their money that they had been setting aside for saving when we would do our little budget with them every week, and they could go get a lollipop, make their deposit, feel kind of grown up. It was just an experience for them to start understanding how banking worked. When they got a bit older, when they got jobs, we made sure that we added in a checking account, a debit card. When they got phones, we made sure we taught them how to use things like Apple Pay, different features like that, so that they have the ability to know how to make purchases, how to pay for things when they have bills to pay, thinking about budgeting. This was just a great tool for them to have. Once they had a good chunk saved up, we made sure to switch that over to a high yield savings account. We love Ally, and there's a link in the description to Ally down below if you want to check them out. Ally was a great way for their savings to just earn a little bit more interest than what we could get them at our local credit union. A high yield savings account is a great tool to start teaching them about the benefits of having an emergency fund. The next account you might want to think about opening for your children is a 529 educational savings account. This tax advantage account is specifically designed to pay for education expenses. So that could be college down the road, trade school, and even in some states, you can use that money to pay tuition to private K through 12 schools. Anyone can open one of these accounts for your child, and anyone can contribute, and there are no contribution limits, which is pretty cool. Whatever you contribute grows tax-free, and if you pull it out for a qualified educational expense, you don't pay taxes on that either. So there's a lot of great tax advantages with the 529. Depending on the state you live in, your contributions could be tax deductible, and you can even get a tax credit on your state return. So you'd want to definitely talk to your tax professional about that. When it comes to when you should open a 529, I would say sooner the better. The more time you have to put contributions in, the more time you have to allow compound interest to grow and do its thing. I found this chart that is a wonderful example of how compound interest and how much you're putting in can really build over time. Another educational savings account that you might want to consider is the Coverdell ESA. This one is very similar to the 529 in its tax advantages. However, it does have limitations. If you make too much money, you won't be able to use a Coverdell. You're also going to be limited by how much money you can put into a Coverdell every year. After I list all of these, I'm actually going to pop up a chart that shows you kind of the skinny on each one that you could take a screenshot of, just in case you have questions later so you don't have to keep going back and rewatching. Some other options you might want to consider would be an UTMA or an UTGA. These custodial investment accounts have a lot more flexibility than the ESAs I mentioned earlier. You can use the money for educational expenses, but it can also be pulled out for something like a car or a down payment on a house. However, these accounts have way less tax advantages. And when your child comes of age, which would be usually between 18 to 25, depending on your state, they take full control over these accounts, whether you want them to or not. Another thing to consider with these two options is that financial aid, or the FAFSA form, will weight these as student income. And the FAFSA weights student income higher than parent income when figuring out financial aid, grants, and loans. So it could have a little bit of a negative impact on the amount of financial aid that your student can receive. Just something to keep in mind. Another account you might want to consider opening is actually one we just finished opening for our 16-year-old son, and that is a Custodial Roth IRA. Now, your child won't be able to open a Roth IRA until they have some form of taxable income. That could be from mowing lawns, babysitting. If you own a business, you could hire your child on as an employee, and that could also count. With a typical Roth IRA, if you're under 50, currently you can only put in $7,000 per year. If your child makes less than $7,000, they can put in up until whatever they earned. So say they earned $3,000 at their job, they can contribute up to $3,000 into that custodial Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is a wonderful investment tool because everything that you put in has already been taxed. The growth is completely tax-free. And when you pull the money out after age 59 and a half, you don't pay taxes on any of it. So starting early and getting your children invested in an account like this can really set them up for a great retirement down the road. This can be a great account to teach kids more about investing. We had our son think about companies he was interested in, and he chose an individual stock with a video gaming company. And then we took the rest of that money and we just invested it into kind of a 3-fund portfolio with 3 different ETFs, just to give him sort of a well-rounded portfolio. And he enjoyed learning about some of these different accounts, what they mean, which ETFs we picked and why, the allocation based on the fact that he's younger, so his allocation is going to look different than ours. It was just a great tool to help him learn some investing terms and to feel more confident and comfortable, which is something I didn't have when I was growing up. I didn't know for many, many years anything about investing. And because of that, my husband and I, we paid professionals way more than we should have to do something that we could very easily have done ourselves if we'd had just a little bit of knowledge and confidence. We're hoping to set our kids up with more information so that they don't find themselves in that same situation. Along those same lines, another account you could open would be a custodial taxable brokerage account. This is very similar to the Roth, except that it doesn't have any limits to what you can contribute, and you can take that money out anytime. You can invest in the same types of things, different stocks, ETFs, index funds, but that money is going to grow with some taxes. So you're going to pay capital gains taxes, and you definitely want to consult a tax professional as you're putting more and more money into a brokerage, but it can be a great tool, and definitely a tool if you ever think your kids might want to retire early, because there's no limits to when you can take that money out. This chart from Forbes gives a quick rundown of all the details I just shared with you. Take a screenshot so you can access it later as you're thinking through what kind of accounts you might want to open for your kids. Now, a bonus tip that can really help to set your kids up financially, and this isn't really an account that you're opening for them, but this is adding them to your credit card account as an authorized user. I talked about that in a video I did recently about how to improve your credit score. Setting your children up with more credit history by attaching them to your credit history is a great way to start them off with some credit history right off the bat. Depending on who issues your credit card, you could do this when they're infants, and each company is going to have a different age limit when you can add an authorized user. Adding an authorized user does not mean you have to give your child a credit card. You can take that card and cut it up or save it somewhere safe. It just means that they are now attached to your credit history, the usage of your card, the payment history on your card. Now, a word of caution, I would only recommend that you do this if you can responsibly handle credit card use. To me, that means you pay that card off at least once a month. You never pay any interest, and you never miss payments. You aren't utilizing a huge portion of the credit available to you. If you're missing payments, if you're carrying a balance, if you're using more and more of that credit card without paying it off, those things could actually hurt your child's credit score. So please do not add them if you don't think you're going to be able to be a help to them. But if you've got responsible credit card use down, adding your children as soon as possible, if the card allows it, will help them to develop some credit history and will really benefit them later when they want to get maybe some student loan debt or a mortgage. I always want to warn parents, and myself included, that as we're teaching our children about biblical stewardship and about things like investing and saving and budgeting, that we guard our hearts and we seek to guard their hearts from sinfully loving money. Because the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. We see that right there in the Bible. We never want to make money and the growing of wealth an idol in our lives. We always want to keep it in perspective that it's all God's anyway. And as we seek to handle it well, as we seek to grow wealth, we want to have His purposes for that money in mind. And as we're teaching our children and praying for our children and modeling it for them, we want to live a life where we really can say it's all His. Even if He grows it or not, Everything belongs to him. I'd also like to encourage you with some of these accounts, you definitely want to talk to whoever does your taxes or do some research. You don't want a big surprise come tax season. You want to avoid things like gift tax, where if you give a lot into one of these accounts, you could get hit with one of those. So just look into that and think about that so that you're not dealing with a big tax bill that you weren't planning on. And also, you want to make sure that your finances are in order first. Like I said earlier, modeling biblical stewardship is the number one way you're going to teach your children how it works, how to do it, and how to think biblically about their money. But if you're dealing with debt, if you don't have your emergency fund, and you're not investing in your own retirement accounts, that's an area you want to get under control before you start putting money away for them. For a variety of reasons, the main one being you want to be a good example of stewardship, but also they have more time to grow that money. You don't. They have, hopefully, you teaching them wise biblical practices where if you're sitting in some debt or having to clean up some messes, you maybe had some mistakes like I did in your financial past. So make sure your financial house is in order. And if you need some help with that, click over into this playlist where we talk more about all things biblical finances and stewardship. And I'll see you over there. Thanks so much for watching.